So is Colin.
I don't know.
Where's your fearless leader, Colin?
You and Colin? Dara, are you ready yet?
Yes.
Okay. Consent agenda of the meeting. Mr. Bowman, could you do some pledge of allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For consent agenda. Taking a motion for the consent agenda. Can we get a second? Second. Anything in consent agenda needs questions or separate consideration? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Just realized he's not here.
No, he left.
He did? Okay.
He has other commitments.
Okay, that's right. Moving on, student representation, we don't have any tonight. Public forum, this is your opportunity to address the school board. I'll take that look as a no, just pretend I'm not here. Moving on to item 8, superintendent's report. Dr. Thompson.
Actually, we have 7. We have that other
Oh, I'm
information.
sorry.
No, it's okay.
Other information. Project update. C.G. Schmidt.
This is me. Good evening, Road Crew, C.G. Schmidt, filling in for Dan. Sorry to do that. Yeah, thanks. Dan's on vacation this week. Just for those of you that don't know me, I'm project manager on the Mill Valley site. So, quick update. You should have in your board packets Dan's update that he did last Friday. And I guess in the last month hasn't really been helter-skelter, but obviously we're back to school. So, Mill Valley, which I'm most familiar with, the interior went well, and that turned over actually a little bit early. Site we turned over in time. We've done the punch list with Jeremiah and his team, so that's going well. Lakeview is done. Punch list is complete on that one, so that project is 100% closed out. Country Meadow, all of the work that we intended doing in the summer has been completed short of some installation of piping, which is taking place outside of any student-occupied spaces. So once that completes, that will be closed out until June of next year when we do the summer work. Then the big carry, obviously the middle school, if you've been by there, they're moving fast. I went over there today just in time to get caught by a really big rainstorm. It wasn't raining at Mill Valley, but over there. So doing well, steel's going, so the two-story portion over the back of the hill, steel's up, they're pouring floors, so they're starting to enclose. Gym box is up, steel is on. The one-story addition towards the main entry, you're starting to see masonry walls. Go to deck, so one thing that happened this week is the site's been down in stone forever, so they started slipping their curb this week. That'll continue, and then you'll start to see the binder course of asphalt going in there, so that site will start to really come together there. So next 30 days, I guess, or next month, look ahead there at middle school, kind of along that same course. It's a bigger project, so in the sequence, we'll move on to sequence 4 and 5 to start coming out with the steel and moving towards enclosure. I did look at what their projection for enclosure is, and they're targeting somewhere around the end of December, which puts them ahead of schedule what their original milestones were in your packet. Mill Valley-wise, I think this has probably been communicated, that's in 2 phases, A, B, and C, and D. B, C, and D, I guess C and D are clipping 2 schedule. Area D, which is the kindergarten wing, and the office area is actually ahead of schedule. And we're looking to turn that over all at the same time at Christmas winter break. Aside from that, everything is going as we expected. If there's any questions I can answer, I would be willing to do so.
So what's the purpose of hauling off the excess soils?
The excess soil is at Mill Valley. There was over-excavation of material there from cutting the ponds and cutting the parking lot. You was anticipated an excess more than what the engineers had anticipated. They kind of thought they could cut and fill. Ended up being somewhere around 10 to 12,000 extra yards of material. There was some conversations I've had of, do we try to incorporate it on the site? Well, I don't know, a 12,000 cubic yard hill it's a pretty substantial hill. So they reviewed their options for, do we keep it, do we give it away? You could give it away, but then the people that wanted it for free had to pay for the trucking, so they ended up deciding, I guess, as a group to haul the material off the site rather than have a tremendous slate. So that's what it was.
$54,000. I would have left it there.
Yeah, we
That's a lot of money.
talked about it, but giving us options in the site in the future for having flat plank, not only plank surface, but flat ground, it's going to make more sense to deal with that now than having to re-animate or bring in equipment and then excavate it out, and then that would turn into a $100,000 project, so. For the future of where we were, I think it seemed to be the path that we had agreed to.
How is drop-off? Okay, Middle Valley?
Yeah, myself and Steve Benitez went through a plan with Jeremiah and the rest of the team of, with the temporary fencing, here's how we anticipate kind of controlling the site. Had the information at school, they disseminated it. As you can imagine, the first day of school, there's a little chaos between the parents, the buses kind of, but Steve was out there and kind of directing traffic, and by, I think Thursday was the first day, by Friday, it's running smoothly there. So everyone knows where they need to go, and it seems to be working well.
So how many companies bid the furniture?
Quite a few.
Yeah, six of them.
Six, I
Yeah.
believe.
So we split it between two, essentially, as noted. And also, again,
Is it all really apples to apples, or not really?
yes.
As far as the furniture, yeah, there were a number of companies that bid, and some of them put in things that would be comparable to,
Yeah.
and those were considered by Bray, but then ultimately removed because we were very specific with the things that we want. So they did go line item by line item through each of the items to make sure that they were comparable.
And again, facility tours, if you're interested, the times are on there, 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning, but we can accommodate if there's an individual time that you'd like to go, or if you'd like us to organize an evening, they're willing to do that for us, of course. There's also a list of information about the additional master planning projects. And number 4, just again, the concession ticket booth and restroom project is still on course to be finished for homecoming. There is a pool rendering attached for your, just where we're at right now with that pool. We did go out for a request for qualified bidders, and there were 6 firms, and that's listed in board docs, those 6 firms that will be essentially bidding on the project. If you recall, that's September, and then we'll, as a board, come back to those bids in October.
So those are the 6 that have been invited to bid, but they haven't expressed interest in bidding.
No, they did. So we sent out to, who wants to, come forward to say, we're qualified, we can bid on this, and so we had a number of them. What was it, 9 or 12?
I think it was 10.
10?
Yeah.
10. And so then we whittled that down to 6.
One of the firms only had 13 employees, so that's how we ended
The
up.
driving to City Hall.
Maybe.
And so we did get a draft facility use agreement from the Muskego Youth Football, and so that's right now being worked through with our attorneys and that group. And we expect to bring back a plan or an agreement in September for the board.
When did that come out?
Last week, what was it, Friday or Thursday? So, any other questions about the projects?
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, now moving on to superintendent's report.
Just wanted to extend my gratitude to the board, to administration, to the teachers for just a really great start to the school year. We had teachers involved in 2 days of district-level professional development on those high-leverage practices, and then 3 days at the school level, professional development and collaboration prior to students coming back on August 24th. And so it was very gratifying to walk the schools on Thursday and Friday, and a little bit this morning to see so many really, individuals who felt prepared for the start of the school year, and students, I think, who are really ready to come back. So lots of smiley faces. So thank you again. Jeremiah's here just to give you a little preview on our update with our lockdown procedures.
Yeah, so we have a group in the district we call the District Emergency Response Team, and it's administrators, police department, fire department, school psych, and facility folks. And each year we meet probably 5 times and look at all our emergency response procedures and go over things like Raptor, and those are where those items come out. Over the last 4 years since Sandy Hook, there's been an alternate approach to doing lockdowns. Rather than just hunkering and hiding, more so of a responsive action, call to action. And it's hard to really specify in any given act of violence what everybody should do, but rather than just specifying everybody has to hunker in a corner and hide, giving the staff more options seemed to be the way that the group wanted to go. So this summer, we sent a couple of administrators and 2 police officers to training. The training is called ALICE, which is one of many different varieties of lockdown procedures. So there's also something called Run, Hide, Fight, and a variety of other things. Rather than prescribing to a certain brand, we just took some of the things that we took away from that training and embedded it in what we plan to do moving forward. So initially, we rolled out some of those training techniques to the leadership team, the principals and cabinet team, and it was really well received, so much so that the next day we had emails from principals saying, can you train my staff on this? So this summer we did 4 schools and the custodial staff, really going through an active shooter scenario. And we actually used Nerf guns, but put them through our current lockdown protocol, which is just to hide in a corner and assume that anybody could enter the room and do harm, and see how many people were shot. We aimed for the feet, but just to kind of go through that motion. We then gave them the option to barricade a doorway or exit the room, and we went through that same exact scenario, and almost every time it was 90% or more survival. So studies have shown that in most of these active shooter scenarios, there's almost a 90% hit rate. That's because most of the time it's just sitting targets waiting to be hit. So offering these things are obviously something we don't love to discuss, but the teachers did feel a sense of security being able to just leave the situation. When you put them in a room in the corner, they often feel that they're just sitting ducks waiting for whatever was to happen. So the things that we are going to change is we're no longer going to do traditional lockdown drills. We thought that for the 2 times we do it a year, it's going to be more of a facilitated thing over the PA by the principal. So we will say this is a lockdown drill for 2 reasons. Number 1, we've been doing it so many times that people are either conditioned to think that this isn't real, or they're on Facebook or Twitter emailing mom and dad saying there's something crazy happening in school. So with that, the principal will walk through, if this were an emergency and there was a bad guy in the building, what could you do to block your doorway? Talk about it with your classroom. So then they would have that time to talk. If there were an opportunity to exit, which way would you exit the rooms? They would talk through that. More of a development and critical thinking thing rather than just a hide and wait. Additionally, staff are able to use the PAs. Any staff member can grab a phone, which will be labeled with the PA call number, to get over the call sign and say, there's an intruder in the music wing. And the more detail, the better, so that if there would be something happening in that end of the building, the other staff could clear out of the building, or students as well. Also, rather than just lock down and hide, which is still a viable option, there's the option to move students to a place of safety. And so that always raises the most questions. What does that mean? Where are we going? Where are we meeting? And really, moving to safety is just that. It's different in every situation. But when we talk about, at the end of the day, if there was a hunker and hide mandate and several kids were killed versus all the kids running out into a neighborhood and being found one by one later in the afternoon, I think we'd all prefer the latter than a massacre. Students and staff are able to barricade their doors, so this is shown to be increased survivability by up to 90%. So staff practice just moving tables up against the doorway and making a wall. Studies have shown that these killers come into the building and essentially want to get it done really quick. The average event lasts 4 minutes, which is actually the time it takes our police department to get to most of the schools unless there's an SRO already in the building. So really minor wording changes, but just a change in practice, and we hope to have our entire staff trained into the fall here. So the remaining schools will also get this training, support staff, and we're hoping to book out training for the board too sometime, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, and actually, if you'd like to even piggyback and be part of one of the trainings that will be occurring in the future at one of the buildings, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So just let us know so that we can make sure to communicate those times with you.
And over the course of the last couple of years, we've gotten numerous calls from parents, some military, some police, some just concerned for their kids that have been in other districts that have these protocols, asking us to explore them. So it's really something that's been called for by the community as well. And we are one of the last 2 districts in the county that haven't embraced, these ALICE procedures or run, hide, fight. So Pewaukee was at the training with us, and they're rolling out with their district right now as well too.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you to you and your team. The next item is just an update on our strategic planning process. The link there just will send you to our kind of working document for what we'll be working with through our strategic planning team. We have sort of a core administrative team, then it expands out to a team that includes staff members, and then we have 4 meetings with community and parents and things like that, in addition to our parent advisory. So our goal is, working backwards, is to have a 5-year plan for the 2018 through the 2023, school year, those 5 years. So we have this year to kind of work through that. We have surveys and student interviews and focus groups and things like that all planned out. At this we're planning those events to happen over the next few months to establish sort of a framework for us to move forward with what will our focus areas be. Any questions?
I want to thank you. There's one article, or who had that video, Clay Christensen, which one was that on one of the articles here, I think. But that was a good one.
Oh.
He had a video, and that Sir Ken Robinson's, that was really good.
Isn't that awesome?
That was really good. So thank you for including these
Yeah.
here, because I look at them. But those 2 stood out, so it's really
So yeah,
energizing.
so those are examples of what types of information we would be bringing forward to our community groups, or our larger strategic plan team, to kind of really focus in on what is education and where's the future and all of those types of things. So that list isn't exhaustive, it's just where we're at right this moment, but thank you. And then the last item is just the contributions to the profession and standing item. So, any questions? Well, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Moving on to other reports, President's report, nothing real specific. Excited to see school year off and going. All of fall sports are in full run. Obviously, football had a big win last week that everyone's been talking about, but there's also girls swimming and cross country and tennis and soccer and a bunch of other things going on right now, so time, hope your nose in by then. On a side note, the football team has been nominated as one of the 4 possible teams of the week, or 5 possible teams of the week with sports. So if you get a chance, log in there and vote for them. Right now they're up by about 800 votes, but just for kids, that can change in 2 minutes. So, any other board member reports?
I have something real briefly. Right after our last board meeting on August 17th to the 20th, I attended the National School Board Association Summer Leadership Seminar. And they had a couple of interesting discussions going on. One was they actually had somebody there from ALEC, which as many people know, really is kind of the antithesis of much of the education community. They really don't like them, but they had a very good conversation. The lady in charge of the education division of it talked about what ALEC was kind of proposing for charter and private schools. They had a long discussion on strategic governments, much of which is what we do already, which is really good. And if you want to hear more about it, Kelly, be happy to sit down. And then at the regional meeting, which was our central region, which is pretty much us in Minnesota down to Ohio, Barry Forbes with the Wisconsin Association of School Boards presented the aftermath of Act 10, how different districts handle the changes, because many states are looking at implementing some of the same changes. So he presented some of the good things, and I was able to jump in and present some of the good things that I think we did to handle Act 10 that really got us working well with the teachers and the community. So, and that was the extent of it.
Any other board member reports? All right, hearing none. Moving on to resolution action items. 10A, administrative guidelines, foreign exchange, non-immigration, immigrant, and visitor programs. Second reading. I guess I read it for Eric, so can I just get a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. The second reading of this. I don't think there's anything more updated. Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to discussion items. 11A, 2017-18 budget. Anything with that?
There is, actually.
Right.
Yeah. About 48 minutes ago, they actually approved the school funding plan as part of the budget. Now, it doesn't mean it's necessarily all the way through, but a motion was put forward for approval. I actually did just attach it to board docs if you wanted to see all the details of it. The two main things that are out are that what is being proposed is the additional $200 per student this year, $204 per student next year, in addition to that next year. The caveat is that there's an extra $24 in there that's actually not going to continue after 2018, so it drops, I believe, to $630 per student for 2019 forward. So the additional money that we were hoping for, it looks like, is going to be moved forward. The other big thing, and I don't know, it doesn't say in the article if it was approved, but the proposal for open enrollment was to actually provide $100 more per student, plus whatever they approve for the per pupil amount. So that could give us an additional $300 per student for open enrollment next year, which is shocking to me that they would approve that, but it's in there as one of the
So more money would follow the
proposals.
student, essentially.
More money would follow the student, correct.
And that would come from the district that student will be coming from?
Correct.
Like killing Milwaukee.
Yes, yes. So if you are a district who brings in more than goes out, it works well for you. We're in that situation. You want to be a charter district, yes.
Wow.
So, looking like good news, and hopefully we'll have,
TV for districts.
yeah, right? Marketing is just through the roof if that happens.
That's a big,
That's huge.
So, we'll be bringing forward a preliminary budget to you for approval on September 11th, and that will be what we'll bring forward at the annual meeting. Hopefully by then we'll have more of a finalized budget from the state, but those are the numbers that we'll be using moving
is it
forward.
believed that the governor will be okay with this?
It's actually a little bit less than what he proposed, believe it or not. They took out some funding for rural schools and some funding for the Milwaukee schools, but it's very much in line with.
Okay, so,
There's a couple things, like for instance, the governor said in order to get that aid, you had to make your employees pay 12% of the health insurance. That was removed when the proposal was brought forward.
okay.
So that likely won't be the case, unless he wants to be a stickler about those little points. We could see a
He's
change.
got a line item he knows.
Right.
He did a lot of his little
Right.
stuff.
I'm curious what gets put back in here, but okay. We'll see.
So all in all, we're looking pretty aligned to what he proposed, so.
Anything else on the budget? Does anyone have any questions on the budget? Moving on with alternative revenue request, item 11B.
So this is a multi-year plan that the Gridiron is working through. Maddie's has this agreement in hand, but hasn't said, oh, we like this agreement. But we wanted the board to see it, and we are comfortable waiting to commit to any multi-year concession agreement plan until after the season, just so we know how things go, what did they actually gain, how does that impact us as a school district and things like that, so.
It's really brought forward just for you guys to start digesting it. I mean, if I myself were to look at this as
Well, I don't want just
all kinds of
throws me like,
but,
that's pretty cool.
No.
okay, no.
This is a very long agreement. And the entire district.
I agree, and I think that's something we need to.
It's the first thing.
I'm very uncomfortable with 10 years. You know,
Okay.
myself.
That's good. I'm glad to
And
hear
that
that.
just jumped out at me, that
Yeah,
it's,
I think there's a lot of stuff, but, you know, it's a framework, and it might start getting your minds thinking of some feedback that we want to give back at any time. If there's something now you want to give feedback on, that's
Can we
fine.
talk about that, or do you want to, or?
Yeah, that's fine. And actually, you know, now, or we can leave this as a standing item on here that, you know, for a while that I'm feeding information back. We have, well, actually, I think Jeremiah just canceled them all. We have meetings with the Gridiron Club once every 2 weeks to discuss fundraising. Right now, we're just going to put on hiatus until we actually have something to go back and talk about. But, you know, as you have information or feedback, feel free to give it.
The only, I mean, looking through here, I guess my feedback is, so I think and I'm just going to check around again, like 3 items. So on 13, item 13, where the flat fee for concessions now is $2,500, I think it was said that the most we brought in, or the Gridiron Club brought in was like $1,500 a year, was that?
Well, that was just last year,
Okay.
because, yeah, they didn't have, it was AFS. The year prior to that, it was 4,000.
Oh, it was?
4,500, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, so we probably look at that, and then, yeah, the item 1, I'm not, that's an interesting one, to the life of the turf. And then the other thing is, that what I was talking, I can't remember what I was talking about, but so when I was there at the game, I thought it went very well, with the exception of when the beverages. I didn't like having to go buy popcorn, stand on that line, and then have to go into another line and wait to buy soda there. So I think any agreement should be exclusive of beverages. I think if Pops wants to sell them, or Maddie's, or if the band wants to throw water bottles, I don't know. I think that'd be fine, because I didn't like that, because that was like, and that caused a lot of congestion. If you watched, people would go from that.
it was
line, right?
pretty tight in that whole
But
area.
it wasn't because you would see the people from Pops would go over there.
That'll get it.
Yeah, and so it was kind of interesting. So I would prefer that beverages be excluded from the exclusivity portion for Maddie's.
Well, and I think one of the things that, right now, we need to relook at our whole contract with Pepsi or Coke or whoever, and that may play into all of it anyway, because we may be a Coke person and we may be forced to serve Pepsi out there, or vice versa.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. It's just, I think multiple people could sell.
Right, well, and I
Yeah.
think there's, you know, you're putting money on the table by not looking at all avenues, and one of the things is getting a beverage contract with a provider at some point, you know, just like.
I just don't want to stand in 2 lines to get us, so,
Yeah.
that was, because I could see it, that's where everybody was going. And that popcorn line was packed.
He was very happy with how that
It was
went.
packed, and it was good, and people were loving it there.
He really thought he was going to be happy to break even.
Oh,
And
I was very pleased.
Okay, then.
he was just shocked.
So those are my comments and my observations, I guess, so.
We made note of those. Any disagreement with what Chris brought up, or any additional things that we should be kind of bringing back?
I haven't had the opportunity to experience it yet, so, other than what's said, I'll...
What I don't understand from here is Maddie will purchase the naming rights to the MHS concession. For what? For what What's the dollar amount? I don't really.
I think it's later.
The naming rights is $12,000 annually?
Yeah, so over 10 years, that's $50,000.
And then in addition to that, he's paying another $2,500.
Yep, the naming rights is separate from the actual concession sales, according to the way I'm reading this contract.
That's the way I was reading it too.
Yeah.
And we would certainly draft for the naming rights, the long-term piece. All of this would be in a contract.
So let's get info.
But we want to get the terms right. And again, I don't know that we're ready to even get to that point yet, because we want to know whether or not we want to move forward with this type of concession standing, you know.
You know, I guess the only, right, the length of the agreement strikes me as extremely long. And then I thought we had kind of at least talked about, right, that initially there would be quite an effort made to get the turf, but then once the turf was in, like more broader-based, perhaps groups associated with the high school would have the opportunity to use, okay, so I'll put it right, so if I don't ever see another cookie dough fundraiser thing come to my house, that's fine with me. So if there's a way that groups with either, you know, access to this or some, through other events, that we can not keep taxing parents from basically kindergarten, you know, through senior year of high school with fundraisers for this, that, and the other thing. I know, but at least, you know, if I did it for a long time,
The one thing we gotta be careful for on there is, you know, this, we're gonna get the turf in, and we immediately have to start fundraising for replacing it, so we're ahead of the game instead of chasing it type of thing. Because what's supposed to last like 10 years-ish, you know,
10 to 12
years. And, you know, so we need to keep a mechanism to keep trying to fund some of those projects, so I don't necessarily want to, I understand where you're coming from, but there's other opportunities that we could do.
okay.
Okay, Rick, how much does it cost to replace turf?
$300,000.
Okay, so it'd be, so then there would be you'd be setting a goal of like 300,000 over the next 10 years. Okay. It's not another million.
No, it's a lot of infrastructure.
Okay, got it.
And a lot of
I was thinking, oh gosh.
Just that, a lot of it to be trained.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions, concerns? All right, thank you. And like I said, we'll keep this on here, and just as things come up, just gives us an opportunity to talk about it and give feedback. Moving on to item 12, information follow-up. On-site clinic update?
The information's, there we're up to 174 visits in the month of July, which was great. So we continue to see improvement in that area. We're going to be talking, working with the clinic on expanding some of our wellness opportunities for staff. We'll bring some of that forward to you probably in September, just to discuss what our ideas are. Other than that, things are going well.
Questions on the clinic? Monthly financials are there. Any comments, questions? Personnel memorandum? Any other information follow-up requests?
Those are fiber rebate, whatever.
Yeah, no, good question. The granting of subsidies are coming in waves every 1 to 2 weeks. Not only are we waiting on the fiber, we're waiting on some other things too. It's kind of a package deal. They're not connected necessarily, but they are all part of our application process. Another example of that is we're actually looking to get subsidy on the wiring for our middle school in Mill Valley. So there's about a $110,000 project that we would stand to get about $40,000 back on. And we're also looking at some of our switches that we'll be purchasing for the new buildings as well, also for subsidy. So it's a combination of all those things. I check often. We get newsletters every 2 weeks. The information in there has not provided me with any further information. Our consultant has not provided us any further information, so I hate to say it's a deadline, but we also haven't had any requests for further information as well. So it's not like they've come back to us as if we're in breach of providing the right information, and I would say we did everything in our power to follow it to a T. To answer your question specifically, No information back yet, still haven't heard anything, and we're waiting for other information as well, all related to E-rate. They've approved $2.9 billion so far, so it's not like they've stopped that funding process. It's certainly coming down the pipeline. And as an example, last year the district received $46,000 in E-rate subsidy. So it's a process we've partaken in. It's something we do every year. This is obviously a much bigger project. Sadly, we've been waiting. And I've also read in their newsletter, they're updating their process once again, which would be about the third or fourth time they've done that. So that kind of leads us to believe it's not as refined as we'd like it to be. So certainly haven't expedited anything yet, and we haven't heard anything, but I'll be as eager to hear back as anyone else in this room, and certainly as soon as we hear something, I'll be happy to update all of you.
So where is the fiber project currently?
Thank you. So the project is now waiting for attorneys to review our lease. Once we hopefully receive approval for them to move forward, we have Intercon, which is our selected contractor, ready to break ground as we need. So ideally, we could start as early as September, and then, if nothing else, into October.
How did you choose that?
Intercon.
Yeah.
We had a bidding process for them, rubric and everything. We worked with our engineers, MC&E, to make that selection. They were our lowest bidder and had very great, I would say, references and feedback on their work, and they're actually doing work in the area currently as well. So.
The attorneys will likely have the lease information back for your approval on the 11th of September.
Would the board like to have that as a monthly update like we do with an on-site clinic, or just as needed, as requested? It's up to you.
I'd just like to know when they break down and when they finish.
Okay, all right, so
I'll do that.
Tony, I'll do it whenever, yeah,
Yep.
there's something significant to share.
Thank you, everyone.
Any other information requests? Go ahead.
I don't know that it's an information request as opposed to a heads up if it should ever happen again. So I'm hearing that apparently when the parking slots were made available to the high school students, the whole lot was made available, and so students pick certain spots, only to learn later that construction equipment and piles of stuff were on their spots. So then they had to pick different spots that, of course, by that time, other spots more appealing were taken. So, just in the future, if there's swimming or something else that causes some spots to be taken up, that gets taken into account. Yeah, so that was...
They get their additional spots later.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. But at least, they might have, it would have been helpful knowing going into that, and they didn't. So just kind of keep that in mind.
We were down to the wire literally the last couple days of summer thinking we could get done, and unfortunately there was a permitting issue where we got our permit approved through the city, then the city had to submit a permit to MMSD, and I don't know where the disconnect happened, but some inspectors came and shut down the
So
site.
what is that, a water line out to the consumer?
Sewage.
Yeah.
I could guess where the problem is.
All right, any other requests for information follow-up? Hearing none, can I get a motion for adjournment? So moved. Second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? We are adjourned at 8 o'clock.
I thought he was
Came to the best meeting. Yeah, get credit. Get your credit for it done.
Good night.
Thank you.
Last week was the biggest crowd because it was New Year's Day, so it was normal.
Wait, you said you're gonna go that way?
The sides and out there.
I went home and watched it.
I did,
What'd you say last time? We took an hour walk, it was great. Left here at 4 That's nice.
go in.
Oh, good. I took a walk, it was an hour walk. I don't do any, like, I don't think tomorrow, like, Tuesdays, I feel like my week is shot. Like, so, because I have a board meeting, and I won't, like, watch TV, I'll be able to
Normally it'll be in Jennifer's. Probably should have said that.
You know, my informal thing is that I do it. Everything that Jack's like, no, you can
Just throw it.
sit on the counter. I usually eat at least half of it, so, but I did eat when I came here.
I don't even understand this. I don't think it's
Okay, so that's what, that makes sense now.
I know what little packets are talking.
That's what I thought too, I thought he was not out to that, like, there's a French pronounce it. It was like Alex, so I thought too. So he goes,
And it's not just like a paper plate or anything? I'm not sure going Amazon.